There are days when connection seems to be something other people have more easily. It can look as if it belongs to crowded rooms, busy families, long conversations, or people who always know what to say. But much of ordinary connection is quieter than that. It is the person at the bakery who remembers that you prefer a plain roll. It is the neighbor who lifts a hand from across a gate. It is a familiar voice at the end of a short phone call. It is a librarian asking whether you enjoyed the book you returned. These moments may not look important from the outside, yet they can make a day feel a little more inhabited. This episode is about small connections, the kind that do not require you to become more outgoing, travel far, spend money, or make a perfect plan. It is not a promise that every lonely feeling will disappear. It is not advice for replacing the people you miss. It is an invitation to notice the small threads that can exist in an ordinary week, and to add one more thread when it feels right. Some people are naturally talkative. Some are quiet. Some have lived in the same place for decades and know the shape of every street. Others have moved recently, lost a partner, retired, changed their health, or simply found that their usual routines have grown smaller. Whatever your situation, connection does not have to begin with a large leap. It can begin with a place, a name, a greeting, a small shared activity, or a decision to let one brief exchange count. There are 7 gentle ideas in this episode. You can take 1, leave 6, change their order, or make them much smaller. The point is not to create a new social schedule. The point is to make room for the human moments that already fit your life. The first idea is to notice the places where you are already recognized. A person does not have to be famous in a neighborhood to be known there. Perhaps someone at the corner shop recognizes your face. Perhaps the person who collects the bins knows the name of your dog. Perhaps you sit near the same window in a cafe once a week. Perhaps the receptionist at a clinic asks how you are doing, and you remember something about her too. These are not shallow interactions. They are small proofs that you appear in the world, and that your appearance can be familiar to another person. Think of the ordinary places you pass through. There may be a bus stop, a small supermarket, a pharmacy, a library, a community center, a park bench, a hallway, a lift, a post box, or the little stretch of pavement outside your home. You do not need to turn every one of these places into a social event. Simply notice which place already feels a little easier because it is familiar. When we are tired or worried, we often see a journey as a list of tasks. Collect a prescription, buy milk, return a book, catch a bus. But a task can also contain a point of contact. You may hear your name spoken. You may be asked a simple question. You may exchange a small piece of local news. The task remains a task, but it also becomes one place where you belong for a minute or two. Imagine Miriam, who goes to a small bakery on Friday mornings. She first began going because the bread was good and the walk was short. For a long time, she kept the visit practical. She chose a loaf, paid, said thank you, and went home. Then one winter morning, the person behind the counter asked whether the rain had reached Miriam's street. Miriam answered that it had, and mentioned that her umbrella had turned inside out. They laughed. The next week, the person behind the counter asked whether the umbrella had survived. It was a very small thing. Miriam did not make a new best friend, and she did not suddenly have a busy calendar. But Friday morning became warmer. There was someone who knew one tiny fact about her life, and she knew that someone would be there. Recognition can grow from repetition, but it does not have to be planned. If you are able to visit a familiar place at roughly the same time, that rhythm can make greetings easier. If you cannot get out often, recognition may happen closer to home. It might be the delivery driver who asks whether you need the parcel placed inside the gate. It might be a neighbor you see while opening curtains. It might be the person who calls to check a service appointment. The size of the connection does not determine its value. The second idea is to make one greeting easy. A greeting is not a test of charm. It can be a wave, a smile, a nod, a simple good morning, or a comment about something already in front of both of you. The weather is useful because it does not ask very much. A dog, a plant, a queue, a bus that is late, or a newly painted door can work too. A greeting does not need to become a conversation. Its only job is to make the doorway between you and another person a little easier to see. Many people worry that they are bothering others. That is a thoughtful instinct, but it can sometimes make every small approach feel too risky. One way to keep a greeting gentle is to give it an ending from the beginning. Morning, I hope you have a good day. That garden is looking lovely. Thank you, take care. You have offered warmth without demanding an answer. If the other person wants to say more, there is room. If they are in a hurry, there is no awkwardness to repair. There is a man named Edward who walks to the postbox most afternoons. He used to pass a woman watering pots outside her door, but he worried that she might want to be left alone. One day he said, "Those blue flowers have done very well this year." She thanked him and told him their name. The next day he asked whether they needed much water. Soon they knew each other's first names. Some days they only said hello. Some days they talked for 3 minutes about the weather or the local roadworks. Edward still took the same walk. The change was not dramatic. The walk simply began to include another person. If speaking feels difficult, choose a greeting that fits your own voice. You might nod at the same person each time you see them. You might leave a kind comment in a small neighborhood group if that feels safer than speaking face to face. You might send a short message to a relative that says, "I saw something that made me think of you." You might thank someone clearly instead of rushing away. Connection can begin with kindness that has no expectation attached to it. The third idea is to build a light weekly rhythm around a familiar place. Large social plans can be tiring even when they sound pleasant. They may require arranging transport, choosing clothes, remembering names, staying longer than you feel comfortable, or wondering whether you will fit in. A lighter rhythm is easier to return to because it asks less. It might be a library visit on a Tuesday, a short market trip on Saturday morning, a gentle exercise class, a church coffee hour, a craft table, a gardening session, or a seat in the same park when the weather allows. The important word is light. A rhythm should support you, not become another measure of whether you are doing life correctly. You do not have to go every week. You do not have to stay until the end. You do not have to talk to everyone. The value of a familiar place is that it gives connection a chance to happen without forcing it. People begin to recognize each other through ordinary repetition. You learn where the cups are kept. You notice who arrives early. You hear the same volunteer explaining where to put a coat. A room becomes less unknown, and that can be enough. Consider June, who began visiting her local library after her husband died. At first, she went only to borrow large print books. She did not want a group, and she did not want advice. But the library held a small hour each Wednesday where people could sit with puzzles, newspapers, and tea. No one required anyone to speak. June began by sitting near the window with the paper. After a few visits, the person beside her asked whether she had finished the crossword. June said she had not, but she knew one answer. That became their usual exchange. Months later, June still did not call herself a social person, yet Wednesday had become a steadier part of the week. There were familiar faces, a warm drink, and a reason to put on shoes and leave the house. For someone with limited mobility, a familiar place may be digital or very close to home. It could be an online book group where you keep your camera off. It could be a regular call-in program on local radio. It could be a video call with a cousin at the same time each month. It could be the shared garden outside an apartment building where you sit for 10 minutes and notice who passes. The point is not the format. It is a small pattern that lets you be part of something beyond the thoughts inside your own head. If you are new to an area, begin with a place that already has a clear purpose. A library, community center, class, place of worship, volunteer desk, allotment, or local walking group can be easier than trying to meet people in a completely open setting. You do not have to explain your whole story. You can arrive, take part in the small activity, and leave. Familiarity grows while you are doing something else. The fourth idea is to let shared activity carry the conversation. Conversation can feel hard when it seems to require an interesting topic and a quick response, but many of the best conversations happen beside an activity. Hands are busy. Eyes can rest on a plant, a book, a card game, a table to be set, a tray of cups, a craft project, or a basket of donated goods. There are natural pauses. There is something to mention when words run out. You may remember this from earlier parts of life. It was often easier to talk while washing dishes, gardening, traveling somewhere, mending something, or making a meal. Shared activity gives conversation a shape. You can ask, "Would you like this one here? Have you done this before? Could you pass that?" The activity does not make friendship automatic, but it removes the pressure to perform. At a community garden, two people might spend 20 minutes planting small herbs. They may talk about tomatoes, then rain, then grandchildren, then nothing at all. At a knitting table, someone may ask how long you have been making scarves. At a local repair cafe, a person may show you where the batteries go. At home, you might invite a relative to help sort a drawer, bake biscuits, look through old photographs, or choose a plant for the windowsill. An activity does not need to be productive to be shared. A puzzle, a television program, a deck of cards, or even folding laundry can make room for companionship. There is a couple, Leon and Farah, who meet their neighbor on Sunday afternoons to water a small raised bed near their flats. None of them is an expert gardener. They mostly discuss what has survived the week. One person carries the watering can, another pulls a weed. The neighbor keeps an eye on the weather. Sometimes they all talk. Sometimes only one of them speaks. The garden is not remarkable, but it gives them a reason to meet without having to invent one. Shared activity can also be a way of receiving connection. Some people are comfortable helping, but find it harder to accept help. If a neighbor offers to carry a bag, show you an app, change a bulb, or bring something from the shop, it is all right to say yes when the help is appropriate. Accepting a small kindness can allow another person to feel useful too. Connection is not only about being the one who reaches out. It is also about letting other people have a place in your life. The fifth idea is to keep a gentle doorway open at home. Home can be restful, but it can also become a place where contact is endlessly postponed. You may think of calling someone and then decide it is too late, too early, too much trouble, or that you do not have anything important to say. A gentle doorway is smaller than a long call. It may be a voice message, a photograph, a card, a text, a short question, or a message that does not require an immediate reply. You might say, "I was thinking of you today. I saw your favorite flowers. How did that appointment go? No need to call back quickly. I just wanted to say hello." A sentence like this gives someone room to respond in their own time. It also protects you from the feeling that you must carry a whole conversation. If they reply, you can decide what feels comfortable. If they do not, your message was still a kind act. For people who are not comfortable with technology, a handwritten note can be a doorway. So can a birthday card sent early, a newspaper clipping, a recipe, a simple list of questions to ask when someone visits, or a photograph set aside to share. You might keep a small notepad near the phone and write down one thing from your week that you would like to tell someone. This is not because every call needs a prepared topic. It is simply a way of giving your mind something easy to hold when the phone rings. Imagine Rosa, who has 3 adult children living in different towns. She used to wait for them to call because she did not want to interrupt. The waiting made her feel forgotten, even though they cared for her. Her granddaughter showed her how to send voice messages. Rosa now sends short ones while making tea. "The roses have opened. I found the soup you like. I am thinking of you." Her children often reply later that day. Sometimes they send a photograph. Rosa still misses having them nearby, but the connection is no longer dependent on one perfect long conversation. A doorway at home can also be physical. You might sit on a front step for a few minutes, put a small chair near a window, wave to someone leaving for work, or keep a notice board where you can see local events. You might invite one person for tea with a clear ending. "Would you like to come for half an hour on Thursday?" Clear limits can make an invitation feel kinder to both people. The person you invite knows what to expect, and you know you do not have to host a whole afternoon. The sixth idea is to allow a brief exchange to count. We sometimes dismiss small interactions because they are not deep enough. A cashier asks how your day is going. Someone holds a door. A bus driver says good morning. A child points out a bird. A neighbor asks whether the wind has been strong near you. It is easy to call these things nothing. But a day is made of many small pieces. When a brief exchange is warm, it can be allowed to leave a trace. This does not mean you have to make small talk whenever you are tired. Silence is also allowed. It means that when a good moment happens, you do not need to reject it because it was short. You can notice it on the way home. You can tell yourself, that was pleasant. You can remember the person who smiled. This is not pretending that a 2-minute conversation solves every human need. It is recognizing that contact often arrives in modest forms. Martin lives alone and does most of his shopping at a supermarket early in the morning. He knows he will not always feel like talking. Some days he puts on headphones and keeps the trip quiet. Other days he says hello to the person arranging fruit who has worked there for years. One morning they discuss the price of pears. Another morning they laugh because neither can find the right tea. Martin does not go home and announce that he has had a rich social life. But he notices that these small moments make the supermarket feel less like a place where he is invisible. Receiving connection can be particularly difficult if you have spent years being the person who organized everything for everyone else. You may be used to listening, helping, hosting, arranging, remembering. When people offer you attention, you might quickly move the conversation back to them. Try allowing one honest sentence about your own day. It can be very ordinary. I had a quiet morning. I have been reading a good book. I am a little tired today, but I am glad to be out. You do not need to turn your life into a report. You only need to let yourself be present in the exchange. The 7th idea is to see belonging as a collection of small moments, not a measure of popularity. Belonging is not always a large group of people who know every detail of your life. For many adults, especially as life changes, belonging is scattered across different places. One person knows you at the library. Another knows you from the building. A relative knows the story of your childhood. Someone in a class knows what kind of tea you take. A neighbor knows that you like to see the first spring flowers. Each connection is different. Together, they can form a gentle map. This map does not have to look impressive. It does not have to be shared on a screen or measured by invitations. It may include people you see only once a month. It may include the person who remembers your name and the person whose name you are still learning. It may include an old friend you rarely speak to but can call when needed. It may include a local volunteer, a cousin, a former colleague, a person who shares a hobby, or a dog walker whose dog always stops to say hello. If you have lost people, it can feel disloyal to notice new connection. But new connection does not replace anyone. A new greeting does not erase an old friendship. A new routine does not make grief smaller by force. It simply gives the present day one more place to rest. You can miss someone deeply and still allow another person to know that you like the blue flowers outside their door. There are seasons when connection must be very small. You may be unwell. You may be caring for someone. You may have no energy for leaving home. You may be recovering from a difficult experience. In those seasons, the smallest version still counts. You might open a curtain and look at people passing. You might reply to one message with a heart or a simple thank you. You might listen to a familiar radio presenter. You might ask someone delivering groceries how their day is going. You might send a photograph from your window to a friend. There is no threshold you must cross before a moment can be called connection. It also helps to choose connection that respects your own boundaries. Not every person will be safe, thoughtful, or easy to talk to. You are allowed to keep conversations brief. You are allowed to say no to invitations that do not feel right. You are allowed to leave a group, stop answering a message, or choose a different seat. Gentle connection should not ask you to ignore your comfort. A good connection leaves room for you to be yourself, including the quieter parts. You might try a simple experiment this week. Choose one familiar place. It could be the shop, the library, the hallway, the garden, the bus stop, the community center, or the bench near your home. When you are there, notice one person or one detail that feels familiar. If it feels right, offer the smallest possible greeting. Then leave the rest alone. Do not ask whether you did it well. Do not expect a result. You have simply made a little more room for contact. Another day, choose one gentle doorway from home. Send a message. Put a card in the post. Call for 5 minutes. Ask someone a question you genuinely want to know the answer to, or make a note for the next time you speak. You do not have to make all the connections happen at once. In fact, it is kinder not to. A life with steady contact is usually built from small repetitions, not from one heroic effort. Consider what happened in your own life when someone made a small gesture toward you. Perhaps a teacher remembered your name. Perhaps a neighbor put a meal at your door during a difficult time. Perhaps someone asked after your parent, your pet, your garden, your move, or your work. You may remember the gesture years later, even if the person did not realize it mattered. This is one reason small connection is worth offering. We cannot always know what another person is carrying. A brief warmth may arrive at the exact right moment. At the same time, you are not responsible for rescuing everyone. You can offer a greeting without taking on another person's whole story. You can be friendly without becoming available all the time. You can take a cup of tea to a neighbor and still return home when you need quiet. Boundaries make connection more sustainable. They let generosity remain something you can repeat. There is a useful difference between being alone and being cut off. A person can enjoy solitude, choose quiet, and still have points of contact that make life feel connected. Another person can be surrounded by people and feel unseen. The goal here is not to avoid solitude. Solitude can hold rest, thought, memory, creativity, and peace. The goal is to notice whether there is enough human warmth around the edges of your days. You might create a tiny list, not of people you should call, but of places and actions that make connection possible. The bakery on Friday, the library on Wednesday, the neighbor with the pots, the cousin who likes voice messages, the monthly class, the chair by the front window, the local notice board, the person at the pharmacy who always explains things carefully. This is not a social obligation list. It is a reminder that the world contains more doors than you may remember on a difficult day. If you live with other people, small connections can be built inside the home too. You might ask a partner or family member one question that is not about tasks. What was the best part of your day? Did you hear from anyone interesting? Would you like a cup of tea? You might sit in the same room while doing different things. You might share a small joke, a news story, or a photograph. Living together does not guarantee connection, but ordinary attention can make it easier. If you live alone, it can help to create a few visible reminders that your life reaches outward. A calendar with a regular call marked on it. A postcard on the fridge. A plant you tend in a shared outdoor space. A book waiting to be returned to the library. A bag ready for a community donation. These objects are not substitutes for people. They are small bridges toward the places where people are. There may be days when an attempt at connection does not go the way you hoped. Someone may be distracted. A message may go unanswered. A group may feel cliquish. You may arrive somewhere and feel awkward. These experiences can sting, especially if it took effort to go. Try not to turn one disappointing moment into a verdict about your ability to belong. A difficult exchange can simply be a difficult exchange. You can choose a different place, a different time, a different person, or a smaller step next time. Think again of the phrase small connections. The word small is not an apology. It is a strength. A small connection is easier to begin, easier to maintain, and easier to return to after a gap. It can happen in a few minutes. It can fit around appointments, tiredness, weather, caregiving, and changing energy. It does not demand that you become someone else. Perhaps today your small connection is a nod at the person across the road. Perhaps it is a short message to a friend. Perhaps it is joining an activity for 20 minutes and leaving when you want. Perhaps it is letting someone help you with a bag. Perhaps it is sitting outside where the world can see you and you can see the world. Perhaps it is simply remembering that being recognized by one person is still being recognized. Belonging is often made slowly. It gathers in repeated greetings, remembered details, shared tasks, familiar chairs, and the small courage of showing up again. You do not have to force it. You do not have to earn it through constant activity. You can begin with one place, one name, one warm sentence, one open doorway. As this episode comes to an end, picture the ordinary lights that come on in homes near yours. Somewhere, someone is boiling a kettle, closing a book, watering a plant, sending a message, setting a table, or looking out of a window. Their day may be different from yours, but for a moment you share the same evening world. Connection is not always a conversation. Sometimes it is the quiet knowledge that you are part of a place where other lives are unfolding too. Let the next step be gentle. Notice a familiar place. Offer a simple greeting if it feels right. Choose a small rhythm you can return to. Let a shared activity carry a few words. Keep one doorway open from home. Allow a brief exchange to count. And remember that belonging can be made from many small moments, gathered over time. You do not need a crowded life to have a connected one. You only need room for one human thread today and perhaps another tomorrow. It may help to think about connection as a practice of attention rather than a demand for results. Attention asks, who and what is already near me? It notices the small shop where the person behind the counter smiles. It notices that the neighbor has been away for a few days. It notices the same child walking home from school, the same dog waiting by a gate, the same volunteer arranging chairs before a meeting. When you notice these details, your surroundings become less anonymous. You do not have to speak every time. Attention itself can make a place feel more alive. There is also room for memory. You may have a person in your past who taught you what a good neighbor, friend, colleague, or family member could be. Perhaps they called without needing a reason. Perhaps they never arrived empty-handed. Perhaps they listened without trying to fix everything. You can carry the best part of that example forward in a form that fits today. A call might become a text. A visit might become a card. A long conversation might become a 5-minute check-in. The form can change while the kindness remains. Sometimes a small connection begins by asking for local knowledge. People often enjoy sharing what they know. You might ask where someone found a particular plant, whether there is a quiet time to visit the market, which bus goes to the library, or whether a community activity is still running. These questions are practical, and they give another person a chance to be helpful. You do not need to pretend you know everything already. Curiosity can be a gentle bridge. You can also offer local knowledge when it is welcome. If a new neighbor appears, you might mention where the bins go, which day the post is collected, or where to find a good cup of tea. If someone looks uncertain at a class, you might point out where coats are kept. A practical kindness is often easier than an abstract offer of friendship. It says, "There is room for you here," without placing a burden on either person. For those who have a pet, the animal may create small points of connection all by itself. A dog can make people stop and speak. A cat in a window can become known on a street. Even caring for a bird feeder can lead to a brief exchange about what is visiting the garden. The pet is not a tool for social life, of course. It is a companion in its own right, but shared noticing can make a nearby world feel friendlier. And for people who do not have pets, there are still shared points of attention everywhere. Whether gardens, books, local history, food, music, sport, crafts, and the small changes of a season. A person does not have to be an expert in any of them. Saying, "I have never seen that before," or "that looks beautiful," is enough to begin. There may be a temptation to wait until you feel completely confident before you reach out. Confidence rarely arrives first. More often, comfort grows after a few ordinary experiences that turn out to be manageable. You say hello once. You go back to the same place. You learn one name. You find that you can leave when you want. The next time carries a little less uncertainty. That is not a demand to push past every fear. It is permission to let familiarity do some of the work. If you decide to try a new group or activity, make the first visit easy on yourself. Arrange transport before you go. Choose a seat near an exit if that feels calming. Give yourself permission to stay only 20 minutes. Plan something pleasant afterward, such as a cup of tea or a quiet walk home. You are not auditioning for a place in the group. You are simply gathering information. Does this room feel welcoming? Is there one person I might recognize next time? Would I like to return? In the end, connection is not a finish line. It changes with age, circumstance, energy,